Welcome back to Power Play, a new era of partnership with China. That's the federal government's take ahead of tomorrow's high-stakes meeting between Prime Minister Mark Carney and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Joining us now to react to the government's new outreach strategy in China is Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer. Hi, Mr. Scheer. Welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for making the time.
Always great to chat with you, Vashi.
On Chinese electric vehicles and EV tariffs, Mr. Polyev wrote on social media, Premier Ford was, quote, right to raise concerns about the impact on workers and our auto sector. The Premier of your home province, Mr. Scheer, Scott Moe, is asking the federal government to lift those EV tariffs, so punishing canola and agricultural tariffs from China are subsequently lifted as well. Are you saying Premier Moe is wrong?
We believe there's other options on the table. For example, this government could cancel the $1 billion taxpayer-funded gift in terms of a loan to the Chinese company to build ferries for British Columbia. There's lots of tools in the toolkit here. We of course, coming from a province that exports a lot of canola, understand exactly what's going on in the canola industry and the hardship that it has imposed on canola growers and those that work in the canola industry. We're also hyper aware of what will happen to automotive jobs throughout Canada if the Chinese government is able to flood the Canadian market with EVs that would then undermine jobs here in Canada. So, Mark Carney promised in the last election that he was the guy that could handle this kind of stuff, that he had the kind of secret sauce that knew how to thread these needles. And what we're saying is we should be coming back from China with net wins, where we don't have to pit one region of the country against another. We can get those canola tariffs dropped while we still make sure that foreign countries aren't allowed to dump products into Canada and threaten Canadian jobs.
Would canceling that loan, though, be a net win? And I ask because I understand that the loan and of it, I understand the argument your party has been putting forward for months now, which is that it should never have happened in the first place. But from everything that I've garnered, the loan has already gone through. The BC Ferries deal has happened. They need those ferries to be constructed. And if they weren't constructed or replaced, then the cost would fall to British Columbians. So once again, even the solution you're putting forward, though I get it at the front end should never happen at the first place, even that is not a net win because it would come at a cost to British Columbians.
Well, we believe the longer-term costs of giving the leverage to the communist regime in Beijing has to be factored in on that as well. There would be benefits to Canadians if Canadian companies were able to replace what the Chinese company might be able to accomplish. But we have a situation where the Chinese government slapped tariffs on Canadian exports, and even after all of that, this Liberal government decided to give that gift of a taxpayer-funded loan to that company. And so what we're saying is, we have some leverage here that we're not using. And it's puzzling to me why, when Mark Carney is going to China to try to open up markets, to try to lift those tariffs, to try to rebalance the relationship, that's not even on the table. And we don't believe, the Liberals love to try to put these false choices. We either do this or we do that, and there's lots of optionality here that don't pit one region of the country against the other and don't threaten jobs either in the canola sector, in the producer sector, or in the automotive sector.
But I guess that's kind of my point. I understand the point that you're making and that your party has made, like I said, on many occasions, that loan should not have been granted from the Canadian Infrastructure Bank in the first place. But the reality of the situation, and ultimately a government, and in this case the Prime Minister, has to deal with the reality of the situation, is it did go through. The company has been explicit, BC Ferries has been explicit, that if they're not replaced, it comes at a very, very steep cost to British Columbians. So even if the government did what you say they should do, it would pit one part of the country against the other. Is that not emblematic of the challenge that the Prime Minister faces?
Well, first of all, it's a challenge of the Liberals' own making, and I don't think we can lose sight of that. The stacking negative consequences on top of bad Liberal decisions is something that Canadians should keep in mind, that we are here because of Liberal decisions. And so we don't have a lot of faith and trust in the same people that made those original terrible decisions to navigate our way through this one. China needs what Canada has. They need our food, they need our canola, they need our oil, they need our energy. And we'd like to see a government that goes to China and negotiates from a position of strength and says, look, we have what you want. Yes, you know, unfortunately, the deal on the loan may have already been made, but we don't accept from the Liberals that there's no optionality there, that there's nothing that can be done about that. We don't take them at their word for that. And when we're looking at things like, you know, a potential MOU on energy, it's raising a lot of questions. You know, what's so hard about selling a Canadian product to a country that needs to import energy? So we've got a lot of leverage here, and it's a little bit troubling to see Mark Carney say one thing during an election, that he was the man with the plan, the guy that could navigate through all of this. I don't believe that he put this particular strategy in front of the Canadian people, that after labeling China as the largest national security threat to Canada, that then we would be going over there and potentially signing deals to open up markets to a country that has been engaged in practices like dumping, and that also represents such a big national security threat.
And I understand all of those points. I think those are very deserved questions to the government about the strategy that they are pursuing. But when I look back, for example, on the last time a Conservative government dealt with China under former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, I found in 2009 and 2012 6 joint statements or memorandums of understanding that were signed between the Harper-led government and the government of China at the time, including an energy cooperation agreement. The idea was framed in the exact same way Prime Minister Carney is right now: strategic re-engagement, a strategic relationship in areas of cooperation with China. Are you saying that Prime Minister Carney should not pursue what Prime Minister Harper tried to?
Well, first of all, I think you have to take into account that the situation has changed. You know, when the previous Conservative government was opening up markets around the world, we were focused on diversifying our trade relationships with countries in every region. It was before things like, you know, 2 Canadians being held illegally by the Chinese government. It was before some of the surveillance and espionage accusations that have now come to light. It was before the Chinese government opened up police stations in communities around Canada. So I don't think it's fair to compare what was happening over a decade ago with what's happening today, with the reality of the current situation. Now, of course, Conservatives believe we should be diversifying our trade relationships, especially in light of the unfair tariffs that have been imposed by the U.S. government. But again, I would point to the fact that Liberal policies have weakened Canada's position. Had we approved Northern Gateway, which Conservatives were calling on, that Liberals vetoed, we would have already had that pipeline up and running and exporting to all kinds of countries in Asia, Japan, Korea, and others. Had we approved as a country a west to east pipeline that would have displaced foreign oil, including American oil coming into refineries in Eastern Canada, we'd be in a much stronger position. So we have no problem with opening up markets to sell our products. If the Chinese want to buy our canola with tariff-free, if they want to buy our LNG, our clean and ethical oil and gas, great, let's sell it to them. But we're very cautious, and we want to see what kinds of deals actually get signed, because we know that when you're dealing with a country like China, you have to be very vigilant on what the details are and what kind of exposure that Mark Carney is opening up the Canadian economy to.
But do you think, with great respect, Mr. Scheer, that you're going to sell more oil or more LNG to China without a change in the relationship or some sort of broad-based agreement or memorandum of understanding like the Prime Minister has embarked on? I mean, that's what feels a little bit incongruous about your party's position, right? You want to take a much harder line on China, not sign these kind of agreements, but you're saying approve a pipeline right now whose primary customer would be China.
But I guess I don't think there's anything incongruent about it. We're saying, yes, we hope that there are deals that come out of this trip, and concrete deals, not just plans to keep talking and, you know, have conferences years ahead, years down the road, which is so far what we've seen from Mark Carney. A lot of air miles getting racked up, not a lot of concrete purchase orders. And so we're very much hopeful that Mark Carney's going to come back and say, good news, tariffs are gone, or good news, we're going to be able to sell LNG to China. What we're saying is that we would have had much more of a stronger position if this had been done years ago. And Mark Carney promised to move with unimaginable speed. Those are his words, not conservatives. And so far, all we have is a promise to keep talking. So what we're saying as conservatives, we really want to see the details. We want to really see what Mark Carney is giving away. A country like China that needs to import a lot of food and a lot of energy, it shouldn't be that complicated to sell them what they need. If Mark Carney goes and opens up, aspects of our automotive sector, or if he doesn't get canola tariffs dropped, then conservatives are going to be highly critical of that, because that's not what Mark Carney said he would do during the election.
But I guess just final question to you. Again, I'm kind of confused. Like, if a few years ago, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor were being detained by China, why would there be something more concrete at this point? Like, this is the juncture that affords the possibility to make some sort of arrangement that allows for the very thing that your party is most focused on right now, which is getting in a pipeline approved right away to send more oil to China.
Well, I guess what we're saying is we are all for a concrete deal that lifts tariffs on canola, that allows Canada to export more to China. What we are saying simultaneously, I think this is what Canadians would expect, is that when you're dealing with a country like China, with the record that it has, with what it's done to both Canadian citizens, what it's done to our economy, and what they've acknowledged, what the Chinese government, what the communist government has acknowledged that it's already done in terms of espionage and opening up police stations across the country, we need to be very vigilant on what the actual details are. And that's our message to Canadians today is, look, we all hope that Mark Carney is successful dropping those tariffs and opening up new markets. We believe that we would be in a much stronger position. I mean, this is the same government that not so long ago was telling our allies around the world that there was no business case for LNG. This is the same party cheered on by Mark Carney himself, who vetoed pipelines that would have allowed us to sell oil and gas to all kinds of countries around the world, including in Asia. And so, we're hopeful, but given Mark Carney's track record and given the promises and the standard he set for himself, we are going to be very vigilant on what deal is actually signed and highlight that for this, so that the Canadian people can make a decision.
Okay, I'm out of time. I'll leave it there. Mr. Scheer, pleasure as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.